Okay, in this video, we're going to look at 30, 60, 90 triangles. These are a little more difficult than the 45, 45, 90s. There's a little more in-depth involvement of what's going on. If you're not interested in the why and all you want is the formula, skip to the next slide. So fast forward this video, probably a minute to 2 minutes in, and you'll see the next part that'll just give you the formulas. If you want to know why it works, I'm going to take a minute to show you that. So we start with an equilateral triangle where all the sides are exactly the same, and we drop the altitude down this equilateral triangle. Because it's an equilateral triangle, I can prove that the two triangles are congruent, and so this actually becomes x over 2 and x over 2. So that is not just an altitude, but it is also a median. So it's both at the same time. So this is my 60-degree angle, this is my 60-degree angle, and these are my 30s up here. So now I'm going to zoom in on one of these triangles. I'm going to zoom in on one side. So let's say we just look at our left side. So I start the process with just pulling out that one half of the triangle. Now I don't know the long leg of this right triangle. And I really don't like dealing with fractions. So before I even start this process, I'm going to multiply both of the things that I know by 2. So that I can get rid of this fraction here. So that's going to turn this into a 2x over here, an x over here, and I'm going to call the side I don't know y. So now I'm looking at y squared plus x squared is equal to 2x quantity squared. And now I'm going to solve for y using Pythagorean theorem and some algebra. So the first thing I do is simplify the right-hand side. That gives me 4x squared. I'm going to combine like terms. That gives me that y squared is equal to 3x squared. Then I got to take the square root of both sides. So y is equal to the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 3 is just radical 3. So now I know that y is not just y, but it's actually x radical 3. So now I have 2x for my hypotenuse, x for my short leg, and x radical 3 for the relationship between the three sides of the triangle. Okay, as promised, on this next slide, we're just going to give the formula. Now, you need to memorize this. You can either memorize it outright, or there's a few little tricks that I think of. If I were to order these numbers, so this is like a 1x, a 2x, and then a radical 3 times x. Radical 3 is like 1.5, 1.6, something like that. It's in between radical 2. It's less than radical 4, so it's less than 2, right? So I know it's going to be in the middle of these two. It's also in the middle because it's across from radical 60. So remember, the short side is across from the short side is across from the smallest angle. The longest side is across from the largest angle. So the 1x is always going to be directly across from the 30-degree angle because it's the smallest side. It's just 1x. The 2x is always going to be the hypotenuse across from the largest angle, which is 90. And then the 60 is always going to be across from the radical 3 times x. So that's what we're going to use anytime we see a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So let's try a few examples. So we're only given one side, and we are tasked with finding the two other sides. The side across from 30 is given to me as 6. That is my 1x. That means that the side across from 90 is twice that side. So 2 times 6, or 12, that was my 2x. And the side across from 60 is going to be my x radical 3. And since my x is 6, it's going to be 6 radical 3. So I could find all three of the missing sides just by knowing this one side. Okay, so let's throw a radical in there this time. The side across from 30 is given to me as 2 radical 5. So that means that 2 radical 5 is equal to x. So that means the side across from 90 is going to be 2x, or 2 times 2 radical 5, which is going to give me 4 radical 5. And then the side across from 60 is x radical 3. So I'm going to plug in 2 radical 5 for my x, and then multiply by radical 3. Remember, we multiply radicands together, so it's just 2 radical 15. Now, of course, I can make it a little bit harder, and I can make that radical 3 side a whole number. So let's look at one problem just like that. Okay, so now the side across from 60 is given to me, and it's given to me as a whole number, which makes it a little bit tougher of a problem. I do remember that 9 is going to be equal to x radical 3. So I'm going to set that equation up over here. 9 is equal to x radical 3. Now, just like the other one, I know if I multiply both sides by radical 3, it's going to get rid of the radical on the right side. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to multiply by radical 3 on both sides. On the left, it gives me 9 radical 3. And on the right, it's going to give me just a plain old 3x, because radical 3 times radical 3 is just plain old 3. Now I divide both sides by 3, and that gives me that 3 radical 3 is equal to my x. That means I can plug that in right down here. This is 3 radical 3. Now the side across from 90 is going to be twice that. So 2 times 3 radical 3. Remember, this is our 2x. So that's going to give me 6 radical 3. And there you go.